All right, so let's start with this. The topic today is prejudice and discrimination. And let's start with this question. Uh, how bad is prejudice and discrimination in Brazil compared to what we know of other countries? What do you think? What do you say? O Brasil tem uma situação de preconceito e discriminação que é pior, é melhor do que outros países. As pessoas se organizam em grupos e começam a pensar no nós contra eles. Eu não faço parte daquele grupo. Se eu estou numa comunidade, se eu sou um cara de classe média alta e eu vou para uma comunidade, eu acho que eu estou fora do meu lugar. Eu acho que aquilo ali não me pertence, eu não faço parte dali e eu nem deveria estar ali. Por outro lado, uma pessoa de uma comunidade pobre, quando está visitando um bairro rico da cidade do Recife, as pessoas olham para ele como se falassem assim, o que você está fazendo aqui? Então existe mesmo essa ideia de se separar, segregar. We call that either us versus them, nós contra eles, or we call this in-group, out-group thinking. Então é pensamento em grupo, fora do grupo. Tá? Então é como se fosse duas possibilidades. Ou você é do grupo interno ou do grupo externo, ou do outro grupo. Tá? We are going to talk a lot about this. So you think this is worse or better than other countries? Deve ser pior do que nos países desenvolvidos. Yeah, sometimes it is. Sometimes it is worse here. I mean, everybody was shocked with George Floyd, right? The movement Black Lives Matter, this movement became global. We are talking about that all over the world. But that is not strange to the Brazilian reality, right? It happens in Brazil all the time. People being treated that way, being killed by police. Just last week we had people being shot in their eyes, and they were just passing by. They were not even participating in protests. So yeah, we have a big problem here. It makes me wonder how people think that Brazilians' prejudice and discrimination is softer, or it's not that big a deal. It is a big deal here. And we're going to have to wake up to that. The second question I'd like to make is this, but I think you guys already know the answer. Do you think that Adam Smith would have anything important to say about prejudice and discrimination? Yes, Adam Smith has a lot to say about prejudice and discrimination. And we have to kind of remind you about that, okay? So let's talk a little bit about this guy. Adam Smith is the father of economics. He's the guy who wrote the book, The Wealth of Nations. Actually, the name of the book is not that. The whole name of the book, it is an inquiry about the nature and the cause of wealth of nations. Uma investigação sobre a natureza e a causa das riquezas das nações. So it was too long, a title, and they cut it short, and it became just Wealth of Nations. But that was a poor choice because the original title let very clear what the book is about. The book was not only about defining economics, describing some of the methods and the most important issues to be addressed by this whole science. It was not only that. Actually, the book talked to an era, a moment in history. And this guy was trying to say, look, gold and silver will not make your country rich. Here we go. We have the second sentence there in this PowerPoint. It's saying, the most abundant mines, as minas mais abundantes, either of the precious metals or of the precious stones, dos metais preciosos ou das pedras preciosas, could add little to the wealth of the world. Poderiam trazer um pequeno acréscimo à riqueza no planeta. So this is not what wealth is about. You don't get rich by accumulating metals. You have to understand that wealth of nations is based on how it deals with production. And there are these two huge forces about capital and capitalism. First one is the division of labor. So you have specialization. People work and do whatever they are very good at, and that is their function. So you try and separate, or I don't know, to distinguish what are people's talents and how they should apply them for their own self-interests. And the second point is scale. So as much as you make money in producing stuff, you get this money and you try to achieve a larger operation over the next cycle. So as things keep going, you are working at every time at a larger and larger scale, so you can lower down the costs and make products available to the masses. Okay, so this is the big message of this book. And if you pick some of the sentences in this book, you're going to see this face of Adam Smith, of someone that is basically concerned about wealth and prosperity and self-interest. So here's a very famous sentence of the book. It is not from the benevolence of the brewer or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard to their own interests. What is that in Portuguese? Não é pela benevolência do cervejeiro ou do padeiro que a gente espera o nosso jantar, mas pela preocupação deles com seus próprios interesses. O que faz o pão ficar quentinho e gostoso não é o carinho do padeiro por você, mas é o desejo que ele tem de prosperar. All right, so this was like classical Adam Smith. Just to finish, let me get this last sentence here. It is the interest of every man to live as much as his ease as he can. And if his emoluments are to be precisely the same, whether he does or does not perform some very laborious duty, it is certainly his interest either to neglect it altogether or to perform it in a careless and slovenly manner. Okay, let me translate that into Portuguese. É do interesse de um homem viver tão tranquilamente quanto ele possa. E se as rendas que ele receber, os resultados que ele receber, forem exatamente as mesmas, independente de ele desenvolver suas obrigações de trabalho com mais ou menos dedicação, é do interesse dessa pessoa negligenciá-la ou de desempenhá-la de maneira descuidada e até desatenciosa. Oh, wait, we were talking a few minutes ago about why public sector in Brazil has this tradition of delivering poor services. It turns out that Adam Smith has something to say about that. But wait. The topic of this class today is prejudice and discrimination. So let's keep going. All right, so I'm going to show you another facet of Adam Smith. And here comes his second important book the theory of moral sentiments. Wait, so you're saying that the father of economics is now talking about sentiments, and this is an economics class? Yes. So behavior economics, after all, has also Adam Smith as its father, if you think hard about this issue. So let's see a few sentences here then. How selfish soever men may be supposed, there are evidently some principles in his nature which interest him in the fortune of others, and render their happiness necessary to him, though he derives nothing from it except the pleasure of seeing it. Mesmo por mais que egoísta seja um homem, há evidentemente alguns princípios na sua natureza que o tornam interessado na fortuna, na boa sorte dos outros, e que faz com que a felicidade das outras pessoas sejam necessárias para ele, mesmo que ele não tenha nenhum ganho ou prazer pessoal, senão o de observar. So the first case, you had like the traditional Adam Smith, someone that is concerned about business, capitalism, and mostly selfish behavior. And now you have a different Adam Smith, and he's saying, look, people are not that selfish. People actually care about each other. The second sentence here is saying, man naturally desires not only to be loved, but to be lovely. Os homens naturalmente desejam não apenas serem amados, mas serem amáveis. And this is Adam Smith, the father of economics. You see, guys, what I'm trying to say is that these ideas are not that radical. What we are saying is that sometimes, or for some time, economics has focused on just a small part of the human behavior. And now we are trying to bring together more aspects of human behavior into the discussion of big economics and societal issues. All right? So we have to realize at this point that we humans are deeply social animals. What is that supposed to mean? Well, our beliefs, as nossas crenças, desires, nossos desejos, and behaviors are affected by social preferences. São afetadas pelas preferências sociais. Nossos relacionamentos, our relationships, and the social context in which we live and make decisions. So let me put it this way. Do you think it is harder or easier to not leave the house in a pandemic in Brazil or in Germany? Vocês acham que é mais fácil para uma pessoa se convencer a não sair de casa no Brasil ou na Alemanha ou no Japão? Suponha que seja uma pessoa com o mesmo nível de renda, né, que não tenha lá alguma certa segurança financeira. O quanto que é difícil para uma pessoa aderir a uma regra que está sendo flagrantemente desrespeitada pela grande maioria dos brasileiros. You see what I'm trying to say here? It is harder for us in Brazil to obey certain norms, certain rules, as we see so many people ignoring them. So what I'm trying to say is that we are group-minded individuals. We think together. Check out this picture just in front of you, all right? You have this guy here in the center. He can see and he understands that some other people are using umbrellas by mistake. It is not raining. There's not a chance that they're going to get wet from the rain. It's just like you have this water running through the streets. He understands that. Even though he sees that, he comes and opens up his umbrella. And you can look at this and say, oh, come on, Luis, this is irrational behavior. And I will tell you, well, it is not perfectly rational, but that's human behavior. That's what we see. And we have lots and lots and lots of experience watching this thing happening. Even though people understand that some behavior is unjustified, it is not reasonable, people still do. You want another example? Check out soccer fans fighting. You know, people go to the stadiums. Oh, I am Náutico, you are Sport, and some other people are Santa Cruz. If you ask these people individually, will you fight today? Will you get involved in a fight today? They would say, no, no, I'm a peaceful guy. I will not do that. And as soon as a fight breaks out, people join the fight. I mean, it's absolutely irrational. You are hitting someone else just because he's using a shirt in a different color. This is not rational. And all the same, people perform this behavior in Brazil, in Africa, in South Korea, in Holland, in wherever, all over the world, people do that. So it is not a cultural thing. It is actually a human thing, all right? So we have to understand the distinction between culture and, I don't say, mind tendencies, right? Human mind tendencies. All right, so let's define this concept that we call human sociality, a socialidade humana. The tendency among humans to associate and behave as members of groups, affect decision-making and behavior, and has important consequences for development. What I'm talking about here, development, I'm talking about development of nations, right? A tendência entre os humanos de se associar e se comportar como membros de grupos afeta a tomada de decisão e o comportamento e tem importantes consequências para o desenvolvimento de um país, de uma nação. Right? So our social tendencies means that we are not purely selfish on one hand, that's good. On the other hand, we may behave in ways that are completely irrational from a code perspective, but as we are in context and we get separated in groups, somehow we adopt behaviors that otherwise we wouldn't. Okay? So in any case, we have to look at person and we have to think about policies and remember that people value reciprocity and fairness. As pessoas valorizam reciprocidade e justiça. We are willing to cooperate in the attainment of shared goals. Nós estamos inclinados a cooperar no alcance de objetivos compartilhados. And we have a tendency to develop and adhere to common understandings and rules of behaviors, whether or not they benefit us individually and collectively. A gente tem a tendência a desenvolver e aderir comportamentos, entendimentos, regras, mesmo que eles não nos beneficiem individualmente ou até coletivamente. Se a gente entender racionalmente o que está acontecendo. All right, so this is the good and the bad news. I don't know if you guys can understand, can see that right away, but this is great news and this is also terrible news. From one hand, we say, look, we can convince people, we can gather movements, and we can even have like societal impacts if we change our behavior, if we have important examples, if we deal with very strong signals and symbols. We can change society. This is good. We can move collectively. This is the good news. The bad news is that we can get stuck in patterns of behavior for a very long time. So I look to Brazil nowadays and I try to evaluate all the challenges that we have as a country, I most of the times end up thinking that we are stuck. We are stopped. We are not moving. We still believe as a society that it is a good idea to make lots of money and to raise the walls of our houses to protect us from poor people. A nossa elite ainda acredita que é uma boa ideia ela fazer mais dinheiro do que o resto de toda a sociedade e ela viver presa atrás das grades e atrás dos muros, porque tem medo do resto do seu país. We still believe that as a society. It's amazing. If people from other countries come to Brazil, this is one of the things that they realize immediately. They see everything is behind walls, or chains, or gates. Você tem portões, correntes e muros para todo lado. Todo mundo fica preso. Se você não tiver segurança, não tiver câmera, não tiver porteiro, não tiver... Você está numa sensação de insegurança completa. And we deal with that as if it was normal. Yeah, it is like that. Quando a gente se separa, quando a gente não convive em espaços públicos comuns, a gente passa a pensar que a gente não é parte do mesmo grupo. Então, uma sociedade, uma cidade que tem poucos espaços coletivos, porque esses espaços coletivos são segregados, não são compartilhados, é uma sociedade que acaba ficando mais violenta. Ela fica mais insensível e ela acaba se tornando mais violenta, menos empática, menos capaz de um sentir a dor do outro. Então, assim, uma das grandes alegrias que eu tive na minha vida foi ter as minhas duas filhas crescendo em ambientes em que ela tinha amigos, amigas de todas as cores. Amarelo, branco, preto, e ao longo de toda a infância das minhas filhas, elas nunca tiveram a experiência que eu tive como criança lá em Minas Gerais, há 40 anos atrás, de ser uma criança branca num bairro pobre em que eu era assaltado toda hora. E os garotos que me assaltavam eram garotos, enfim, nada muito grave, nada muito de risco de vida, mas eram garotos pretos da favela, muito próxima da minha casa. A ponto de a gente se reunir, os amiguinhos lá, quando a gente estava jogando bola na rua, a gente colocar pedaço de pau escondido atrás do gol. E na hora que a gente chegasse, a turma invadia correndo para assaltar a gente, fazer o arrastão, a gente dava com um pedaço de pau neles. Então era assim, uma situação bizarra, que era parte da minha vivência. Estou falando um pouquinho em português, tá, gente? Para abrir esse parênteses aqui. Eu já fui assaltado de todo jeito que você imaginar na sua vida. Já fui assaltado por criança, por velho, por branco, por preto, por amarelo, por mulher. Já fui assaltado por mulher, com uma arma. Já fui assaltado de todo jeito. Era uma região da cidade de Belo Horizonte violenta. E eu era um garoto de classe média alta, branco, numa região onde tinha muitos pobres negros. A vivência das minhas filhas, graças a Deus, é completamente diferente. Elas cresceram tendo amiguinhas pretas, brancas, amarela, marrom, de toda cor. A minha filha mais velha nos Estados Unidos e a minha filha mais nova aqui. Então, assim, isso faz uma diferença em como a gente constrói a nossa visão de mundo. All right, so coming back here to our slides, I want to stress this last point here very much, guys. Please pay attention to this, okay? Policymakers, os formuladores de políticas públicas, sejam gestores, sejam políticos, they often underestimate other regarding preferences. Eles subestimam as nossas preferências na empatia em relação ao outro. Eles desenham políticas que pensam assim: o cidadão só pensa nele mesmo e está pouco se lixando pro resto. É por isso que a gente coloca multa para tudo e coloca às vezes as regras individuais, perdeu, está marcado, não tem jeito e tal. So we have to think about this and develop policies that can draw upon this feeling, this solidarity, this ability that people have to sympathize and to help each other. We are not doing that yet. I have just one single example that comes to mind. You know, when you have like crédito solidário, have you heard about this? So you make a borrowing, you take a loan, and then someone else will be co-responsible for the payments. So like a group of people in the same community, all of them will get money from the bank. If one of them stops paying, the other people will kind of cover up. They are all collectively responsible for paying back. So this is a good idea. This is one of the few policies that we have that really understands how people behave. You know, sometimes people will make all efforts to pay back because their image in the community is at stake. A imagem delas junto àquela comunidade, junto aos seus amigos e tal, fica em jogo. Se ele não pagar, todo mundo se lasca. Now, this is the kind of good idea that you can help people help each other, right? All right. There are a few examples I want to mention, but they will be available to you later on, and you can also read it later. But let me just go through them. First one is a field experiment in Zambia, which means a very poor country in Africa. So these guys were trying to get people to use condoms, preservativos, né? Evitar que as mulheres, principalmente, pegassem doenças venéreas. So they approached hairstylists, cabeleireiras, and barbers, so cabeleireiros, os barbeiros, and they kind of gathered these people and say, all right, we are going to give you some of these products, and you can sell them. You're going to have the chance to purchase them at a very low cost, and then you can sell them and make a profit. And then they created different incentives to see how people would behave. In one case, you would give them for free. In the other case, people would have a 10% margin on sales, which means a sufficient profit, but not too big a profit. And then some other people, you would have like 90% margin in the sales of this condom, all right? So, and then there was this final agreement to some other people in saying, like, I'm not going to give you money. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to show off your name if you are the winner, if you are the one selling most of this product and getting more women to try the condoms, the female condoms. If you are the most successful salesman of this idea, we are going to get your name in a big, big show off, a showroom. We're going to give you stars. The number of stars tells how successful you were. And basically they were saying, we're going to give you status. Se você for mais bem sucedido em promover o uso de preservativo entre as mulheres da comunidade, você vai ganhar mais estrelinhas, a gente vai mostrar isso num outdoor, alguma coisa assim. And then it turns out that the financial incentives were not stronger than the status one. The star treatment, which basically gives people status for participating and for being successful in promoting the policy, it got more successful than the other one. Então, as pessoas não estavam se movendo pelo dinheiro. ou se, ainda que se movessem pelo dinheiro, o impulso de ganhar status na comunidade era mais eficaz do que o impulso de ganhar dinheiro. And that, I mean, this is not conventional economics. If you look at conventional economics, they would say, no, that will not happen. What will happen is that the more you pay people, the more they will be engaged, they will be dedicated to a cause, right? The second example I want to bring to discuss with you here is this thing about public goods gain. So how this thing works? It works like this. It's a game. You ask people something like this. Hey, you just have 100 reais. Here it is, 100 reais. How much of it you would share with a friend, a classmate? Se você recebesse 100 reais, quanto que você dividiria com um colega de sala? And then people say, yeah, I would share and I would stay with 60 and I will give 40. Oh yeah, I would, I don't know, I'll take the whole 100. So how people participate in this game, it tells you how much inclined, how much willing to look at each other in a favorable way and how empathic people are. O quanto que as pessoas são capazes de se colocar na posição uns dos outros, alright? But they did this experiment with people of two categories. On one hand, you had people who had been exposed to war zones, who lived in war zones, who lived in very violent parts of the country. So if people are exposed to violence, they get less sympathetic concerning outgroups people. So let me express this carefully. Everybody has some level of empathy and solidarity. But if you have been exposed to violence, you only will be sympathetic to close friends and to family members and to very close neighbors. As if you are not in a violent region, you are more inclined to be generous even to people you don't know, even to people that are not your close friends, are not your family members. So you would be generous even to outgroup members of this society. You see, so violence plays a big role in how things end up happening concerning empathy, solidarity, and cooperation. The next example is exactly about cooperation. It's when you have like a scheme, one more time, you have a game, hypothetical situation, and you check how people would behave either as free riders, which means participating in an opportunistic way, only taking care of himself or herself and not caring about other people, or if they are conditional cooperators, which means I will cooperate if someone else is also willing to cooperate. And then it turns out that conditional cooperators are much more widespread than we thought. And these things happen all over the world. So they check the same situation, the same game, they have applied it in different countries. And what you see is that in the majority of the countries that they tested, conditional cooperators is basically the choice, the most predominant choice. It is not opportunism. It is not free riding. And if you look at what is the prediction of conventional economic models, everyone is selfish, everyone only will care about him or herself. And that's not what you see in real life, okay? All right, so we have very strong evidence that human beings are not that selfish. We have like a more sophisticated decision making there, one that will often be affected by the context, the element of violence and violent experiences, and many times the quality of agreements, how people can trust each other, and then they will behave cooperatively if they can trust each other, right? That's what we call conditional cooperators. Okay, let's stop here because we want to have a look at the questions. But if you check our blog, there is this very, very, very interesting talk by Paul Bloom. So this is a very extraordinary video. I want you guys to watch it. It's just like 16 minutes long, not too long. And if you click here, you can choose the language. So you can have subtitles either in Portuguese, in English, in French, whatever. But please have a look at this video. You're gonna like it a lot. It is, one more time, about prejudice and discrimination. Então, gente, olha só. Eu descrevi para vocês a natureza do preconceito e da discriminação, a base comportamental do preconceito e da discriminação, mas eu descrevi assim muito superficialmente. Eu disse para vocês que no fundo existe essa lógica de pensar coletivamente, de pensar em grupo. Nessa palestra, o que o Paul Bloom faz é descrever o funcionamento da mente. Ele vai lá e fala assim, olha, preconceito e discriminação é uma face de uma coisa maior, que é a nossa tendência a categorizar. E a maior parte das vezes essa habilidade é boa, só que a gente tem que tomar cuidado com as circunstâncias em que ela falha. Então é uma mensagem muito interessante e eu acho que vale muito a pena assistir, certo? Enjoy your Friday. I'll see you next time.